we have the will. At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with, and this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Hip News. We're your guides. I'm Vessel 1.
And I'm Vessel 2.
Bringing you the top stories and what's happening in our community and how it affects us.
Dr. Taylor, I understand that reparations is now coming front and center. It's your city in San Francisco.
Yeah, it has come full circle here in San Francisco. We'd already done work on the issue of slavery reparations in the state of California statewide, because people like Imari Obadeli, who was a student of Malcolm, and his brother in Detroit, they created the Republic of New Africa with a K, for Africa with a K, and they advocated for reparations and the separation of 5 southern states, Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, South Carolina, and Louisiana, where we had large population majorities throughout counties throughout the South, and in the state of South Carolina and Mississippi, blacks outnumbered whites, believe it or not. And so that was one effort, the Republic of New Africa in the 60s, and that comes from the Malcolm X line. And that was seen as, reparations was seen as a black nationalist thing, as a thing of radicals. And even amongst nationalists, it wasn't prioritized by all. Like the Black Panthers did not advocate for reparations. They never did outright, even if they felt in principle they were right. They never itemized it as an issue in their 10-point plan. They never asked for reparations. They asked for abolishing prisons. They asked for freeing all blacks from having to do military service. They asked to remove police from the black community, but they did not ask for reparations, believe it or not. The Black Panther Party in their 10-point plan, they never demand reparations. So reparations was still a marginal issue even amongst black nationalists. Malcolm X never openly advocates reparations, not outright. I mean, he may have advocated the principle, but you don't hear Malcolm saying, we want reparations here in America by any means necessary. He never advocates that. So the Republic of New Africa is sort of the caretaker of this question of reparations in the modern phase until Randall Robinson comes along 40 years later. And says the debt. Now all of a sudden you have this liberal integrationist, not a nationalist, representing a whole other ideological perspective from the black movement tradition of our history, saying reparations. And many people took note of Robinson's book, but it made its noise, it had its impact, but it didn't stir any kind of activity in terms of organizing. Then you had Ta-Nehisi Coates 13 years later write the case for reparations piece in the Atlantic, and when he wrote that, that's why we're talking about reparations now. It's been discussed in presidential debates. It's been discussed in congressional hearings. We've had it recognized and passed here in the state of California, which is no small thing. If anyone thinks that the most populous state in America promising and recognizing reparations is a small thing, then they're just very cynical from having been disappointed by the past. They organized a 15-seat committee representing 15 different issue areas of black life. So if you were incarcerated, there's a seat for you. If you're a juvenile, a young person, there's a seat for you. If you were someone who got evicted from your home due to the housing policies, if you were academic and had historical knowledge, there's seats for Amos Brown, a great pastor who comes in the Martin Luther King tradition and a student of King. He's on the committee. He's actually on the state level, a California committee, and the city level, San Francisco, where we're meeting, and we have a 2-year window to come up with a plan to distribute reparations in a city with a $560 billion income from defunding the police in San Francisco. And so that's separate from the effort we're making towards reparations.
So what do you think about what he said so far as the political scenery and his point of view of how America is basically, as we've heard time and time again from Malcolm X, that the chickens have come home to roost?
Well, I think the doc was he was on point, though a little passionate. He kind of got a little bit excited during his explanation, but yes, a lot of what he was mentioning and speaking about in terms of the urban community is valid. The questions that's at hand are the history factor. We have to, time and time again, we always speak about history and how vital it is for us to produce or at least acknowledge what was wrongfully done to the Coppertone people of America, or the indigenous, or the Indians of America. When it comes to reparations, there's a lot of controversy about how to go about receiving or putting in place of reparations. Some, again, feel that it's a necessary tool, as the doc was talking about, that there's many ways for reparations. Does not necessarily has to do with financial. You could do a startup kit, like you said, or give what they have in documentation, 40 acres and a mule, or land, or some, I guess the word would be, wouldn't be payback, but some type of retribution to what's been done to the people. There's many ways you can handle this situation, but the question still remains: will they live up to their duties and be honorable about it? First of all, you have to acknowledge it, like I said. 2, it has to be documented in the history books, or where people know that this tragedy has happened. What do you say about this?
Hey, I'm all on board. It sounds like you and him share the same views, and I believe those views are to be shared.
To make us hate ourselves. And this is so nonsensical, it's so laughable, it's so demonstrably untrue, but unfortunately they are writing this as if that is the actual 100% factual historical occurrence. White people were going to lynch this poor black boy, and when they weren't allowed to lynch him, they turned up and destroyed the rich black area because they were jealous.
Right, exactly.
Total nonsense.
By the way, this is also talked about as the greatest racial, mass murder in American history and so forth. And that's kind of ridiculous, right? When they started, whites do better, and the 26 blacks die and 13 whites die. I mean, it's, and yet they were the ones, armed blacks were ones that went there and started the issue, right? So, in fact, the evidence is that they fired the first shots, and then they went ahead and killed 11 white guys, right? White people at that moment. So, I mean, again, it's obvious. Every one thing I like to do with you is share and get your impressions and thoughts about some facts of history. As an historian that I am, and I think that the way to see the present is also looking at the past. So we've just seen this propaganda that's going on about Floyd. We've seen this. We've had massive black shootings of white police officers, white people across America, rapes, murders. We see the attacks of blacks on Asians, right? And that's not even discussed. I mean, they never say that you're having massive attacks since the George Floyd thing. So you have one black that dies under his name. We have all these whites are attacked, and nobody says anything about it. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of white people, thousands actually across America. Again, over 500,000 per year. And this is going on, I think, to a great extent because of the fact that the media is inspiring them to do this. They are teaching black people to hate white people. And that's exactly what this Tulsa massacre is. I mean, it's not about getting justice for black people. And it's really about making black people hate and have disgust, hatred, and violence against white people in America, and that they organize against us. And this is not directed by black people themselves. This is really directed by the masters of media that have presented this big lie.
But also because that is a window to the future. You can learn a lot about what happened and you can apply it to the present day, because things we've talked about today are just the beginning of what is going to happen to white people. And that kind of hatred, that kind of rage, that kind of abuse, that kind of torture, that is what is coming to white people now. And you already see this in places like South Africa. You've seen this in nations where white people founded those nations and did their best to actually raise up the people of those nations who weren't white. But these people rebelled. Now they have taken these nations back. These nations have collapsed, and white people are a hated minority. But this is coming to America, and it's coming to Europe too. It's coming to nations where white people are actually the indigenous people. And our people must understand these truths. They must educate themselves. They must educate their loved ones. And they must sound the alarm. Because if we don't sound the alarm now, tomorrow may very well be too late.
And I would just add, it kind of relates to the previous, perspective offered that, no amount of money can be put on the price of the injury of slavery to black people over time, in the sense that, America itself will be healed by black people's reparations. And that shouldn't be the reason for it, but that would be that's what I was trying to say earlier, is the H.R. 40 was about how does slavery affect white people? Like how white people in America compare to white people in Brazil, or white people in South Africa, or white people in New Zealand, right? How are they? Why are they dying? Why are they dying faster than any other white people on the planet? Why are American whites' life expectancy declining and every other white group's life expectancy increasing? Why is black life expectancy increasing? In the last 10 years, our death rates have lowered compared to with white, between us and whites, it's lowered. In other words, they used to live a lot longer. No longer do they, not because we're living longer, but because they're living shorter lives. The American white man is the only white group on the planet who is dying out in 33 or 50 states. Why? See, and that's why you need to study slavery. What has slavery done to them? Slavery is killing them. The denial of it has killed them off. This is not my opinion. This is actually happening as a shock to America and to the world is the sudden reality that white people are dying faster than they're being born in more than half of America. And that's not including the 130 people that are dying every day from the opioid crisis, to the rate of 75,000 people now passing guns and car accidents. It used to be tied with just 5 years ago. So the opioid crisis is killing whites at an accelerated rate, and then they're dying from the baby boom generation, dying out at a larger rate. So it's generational, and it's very specific. Those who are in their 40s and 50s who believed that the American middle-class dream was going to be theirs, and then Ronald Reagan happened. The very man that they love and champion, his whole orientation towards the state and its relationship to the society in terms of the role of the government, he said government is the problem, where FDR said government can fix a lot of your problems, and LBJ agreed. And Reagan was the anti-FDR in history. So we've had to endure anti-state ideology that Reagan championed and has had other champions ever since, and of course explodes in the Trump moment. So we've been here where we can see clearly that that you have a problem of race, you have a problem of unity in the country and disunity in the country. As the caller said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. The problem is many whites, too many whites, up in 70, 80 million, don't want to be a part of the rest of us. And that's a problem in terms of national unity. In the meantime, the only way you're going to fix the black part of it is through reparations. Even William Julius Wilson, who was the champion of the radical left in the 70s when he wrote The Declining Significance of Race in 1978. And everyone said, race is not as important. Class is more important. See, it's the black poor. It's not black. It's black poor only. And the next book was called The Truly Disadvantaged, because everyone missed his point. He didn't say race didn't matter. He said you add class to race and you see the real issue. So then he said truly disadvantaged. He wrote the book Truly Disadvantaged in 87. This book was written to say it's job stupid. Give young black men jobs in cities and you'll transform cities. You'll transform crime. You'll transform families. This is what William Julius Wilson said in 87. And then he wrote in 2010 a book called More Than Just Race. And all of those on the left who had championed Wilson's class over race analysis ignored the fact that he said in 2010, he said that white America must be convinced that an economic remedial plan must be established to fix the injury of black America in order for America itself to be whole or healed. And they have to be persuaded through a form of politics. That's what reparations is. It's not just let's see what white folk gonna do. Reparations is a political movement. People are organizing behind it. And that's what moves it from impossible to possible, is the organizing. As I said earlier, black people betrayed this heritage. We walked away from reparations. It didn't walk away from us. Our ancestors, when they were asked what you need after slavery, they said 40 acres and a mule.
There you have it, 40 acres and a mule is the only thing that we asked for. Do you agree? Disagree? Any comments? What you thinking, Vessel One? Is he on point? Is he telling the truth?
Well, yes, I think that he is making valid statements, and what he's proclaiming is definitely in need, and I admire his willing to be frank about how he feels and speaking the truth. You can't deny that the doctor is on point.
Yes, he is definitely telling, I think, a side of the story that's not often told, and I'm in agreement with him. Up until this point, I have nothing that I can say that he said that has led me to believe that he is very passionate, and this is, I'm assuming, some hot topic issue that he enjoys talking about.
I agree. But again, there's a couple of things that we, as a people or as the urban society, has to address. Again, the things like was mentioned by the doctor. You know, where do we stand? Who are we in the face of uh, America and its government and the elite? These are the things that need to be addressed. Also, again, you can't stress enough about keeping or instilling these factors of these atrocities of history in the history books, or where it's uh, this knowledge is there for people to see. Even though if it is a ugly truth, it's still the truth. So uh, I really uh, believe that he's onto something. And again, these are the things that need to be addressed, along with this idea, which in many before, when Malcolm X made the statement of separation and doing for your own self and starting your own businesses and having your own community, society, and taking care of your own people. I still believe that is a big part of it, because we've been through this integration for 50, 60 some odd years, and it's still, it's not in the eyes of the, I guess, the people who wanted to start it, or even the people who wanted to be participate in it. It's not nowhere near where you think it could or should be. There's no uh, nothing equal, nothing sane about this. People are still uh, prejudiced and still hold people accountable uh, due the color of their skin or the rank or society place that you are held in, you know, which is lower class, middle class, upper class, or higher class status. Um, there's still things that's hidden, that's not been told or taught or even shared. That includes health, uh, history. Can stress this enough, and also the dangers of economics and how it affects the people in America. How you feel?
I agree, concur 100%. But I also am in the realization that this is a global situation. They, as a group of people, have managed to build a system, a destructive system that reached the whole globe. And there's pretty much not one place I can think of where you can escape it. It's just in some areas, in some borders of places where none of the places where we actually go to should have borders. They have been able to dominate and control. But yeah, I think it is a definitely conversation that we don't hear about on the regular. but I'm definitely interested in hearing what more else he had to say. Let me see if I can finish this off.
And after that, 50 years later, we were at the NACP talking about integration. We're talking about integration. We listen to Booker. We listen to Booker from 1880s to the 1890s, and all of a sudden the NACP jumps up, and Booker's even with the 40 acres and the mule idea because it was about black self-development. Booker says, cast your buckets where you are and do black self-development. We know this land. We run Alabama. We run South Carolina. We run Mississippi in terms of the farming. We can develop a black kingdom down here. This is what Booker Washington's ideology was. And then the NACP comes along and says, oh, no, we want to integrate. And Du Bois comes along with them and says, we want integration. That black people's first political policy. They wanted freedom, but that's not a policy. Their first policy question was, what do you want? When they were asked, what do you want? They said, we want 40 acres and a mule. They didn't say we want integration with white folk. They didn't say we want white Jesus. They said we want 40 acres and we'll do the rest ourselves. America won't do for itself because it's got black people here. The white man in America is suicidal, Carl. That's what that data I was just sharing with you shows. They're willing to die off and kill themselves off in a system that is toxic without health care. A system that is toxic in its tax policy, only enriching the rich. A system that is poisoning the water. A system that is poisoning the pipelines. These people would rather all of us die than the white man either be at the bottom, be equal, or not have it at all. And that's the danger of what we're seeing, is what we saw on January 6th is these people are mentally and spiritually at a place where they're willing to let the whole thing be destroyed right now. This is an ongoing issue that we're facing right now.
As we get ready to conclude, again, Vessel 1 and Vessel 2 would like to thank our listeners. Also, call, communicate, and comment. For Hips News, this is Vessel 1.
And Vessel 2.
And we're signing off. Until next time, next week, Wednesday.